Today I want to talk about my favorite speakers and how I got here, because it's been a real long journey. I've been a mobile DJ since 1989, and there have been problems along the way, and I've done my best to address those problems. But it seems like every time that I created a brand new set of problems. Back in 1989, when I was working for the multi-op, they had these terrible old stage monitors. They were 15-inch woofers and a big horn. The story was that there was a Ted Nugent concert sometime in the early 80s in Kansas somewhere, and a tornado hit it, and the speakers were like a complete loss. But the guy who owned the multi-op bought this system off of Ted Nugent and rebuilt the speakers, and that's what we were using for our systems. I don't believe a word of that, but don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, ever. So, these speakers were incredibly mid-heavy, and they were on the floor. I hate mid-range, by the way, and the reason I don't like it is because, A, too much of it hurts my ears, and also, I'm talking to you in the mid-range frequency, and when that's overpowering at an event, people have to scream at each other because the horn is taking up all that space. So when you drop the mid, you don't have to scream at each other so much. That's just my personal thing. And that was a problem back in 1989. So when I built my own PA system, when I started my company in 1994, I bought these speakers. They were used. I think they were from 1983. They were three-way tops. They had treble horns, a mid horn, and a 15-inch woofer and a scoop on the bottom. Sonic makes them, their local company. They sounded a lot better than those old junky floor monitors we had. And I bought a Crown Power Bass 1 amplifier to power them. They sounded so much better. And every few years, I'd have to take my speakers in to get them repaired because I rocked audiences so hard, I would blow cones and horn drivers. At least that's what I thought. I ran that system for the better part of 10 years. And someone pointed out to me that I was actually underpowering my speaker with the amplifier. I didn't match the amp with the speaker at all. I didn't even know how to do it, and that was causing speaker damage. I wasn't overpowering my speakers, I was underpowering them. As soon as I learned that, I bought an amplifier to match my speakers. And I also went ahead and bought a pair of subwoofers. And the system sounded pretty good. I knew how to match everything. Then somebody told me, you know what, if you got those speakers up in the air, you'd be able to cover a much larger space, and it would probably help you out a lot with your school dances. You wouldn't have to crank up as loud. So I did. I got a set of speakers that I could put in the air because there was no way I was going to get those big Sonics up there. I think they were JBL, or were they JTX 115s or something like that. I got a separate amplifier, so I was like bi-amping. I put an active crossover in the system, and I think I also put like a GEQ in there just to kind of help out a little bit. So with the speakers up in the air, I covered a lot more space. I didn't have to push nearly as hard, but I created a new problem because old ladies would look at me and put their fingers in their ear and be like, "Nah, give me dirty looks." That sucked. But you know what? Don't put grandma so close to the speakers. Put her like way in the back of the room. She's going to be a lot happier there anyway. But it sounded good. But the amplifiers were crazy heavy. I had this Crown Macrotech amp in the rack, and that alone weighs over 70 pounds. You add an additional amplifier that might weigh 40 pounds, plus a crossover, plus a wood rack. Man, I could feel it. I mean, it was crushing my spine every time I picked that thing up. So I decided that, maybe a set of Crown XTI digital amps that weighed 17 pounds apiece with built-in crossover and DSP would be cheaper than back surgery. So I went ahead and I picked those up, and I got rid of the Crown Macrotech stuff and went with that, and that helped. And then I met John Krupa at DJ Expo back in like 2009 or something like that. Introduced me to the RCA Art Series 312A, which was a pretty affordable speaker, and the thing sounded great. Active, no more amplifiers. I'll give him a try. I remember taking him to the first event. When I loaded the truck, I really felt like something was missing because I was so used to loading an amp rack, and I didn't have to anymore. Because not only did I have built-in amplifiers in the speakers, but I didn't have to put any thought into how to match up the speakers with an amplifier. RCF already did it for me. Just a volume knob on there, crank it up, plug the speaker in, and go. Science fiction. I mean, I had to plug the speaker in AC. That was new, but yeah. And then you don't have to worry about a backup amp anymore either, because you have two speakers. One speaker goes, you got another speaker that works. That's pretty cool. I remember the first time I had him at the event, I was playing some background music, and I heard this beautiful 12-string acoustic guitar. And I thought to myself, oh man, they didn't tell me that they were going to have a musician for cocktails. I better turn this system down so I don't step on them. I did, and the sound went away. The acoustic guitar was coming from the speakers. It was so crisp and clear. I didn't have all that stuff in the audio chain anymore to cause hum or any problems. It was just direct mixer to speaker, and by that time I was running direct computer to mixer sound card too, so it was a real clean signal. I was very happy with it. And then I had a stroke, and I could no longer perform on my own. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't carry the stuff around. And everybody told me there's no way that you can DJ on your own. You're always going to have an assistant. There's no shame in that, get an assistant. So I did for that summer, and I ran into problems with that. I mean, good people, but you know, nobody's going to be as concerned about showing up on time for a gig than you are if your name's on it. So I'd have assistants that would come late, and it was just a lot of stress. I'd have to get a backup person last minute. That was a lot of stress. So I had to figure out a way, despite what everybody told me that I couldn't do it, to build a system I could handle one-handed, and I did. A 23 pound speaker, RCA Art Series 408As. I only had an 8-inch woofer in it, but it was neodymium, so it didn't weigh much. It had a handle on top so I could pick it up and put it on a tripod by myself. Not 6 feet in the air. I didn't have to, because I got Franken stands, which are pneumatic, they're powered. You can easy up and easy down with those. And that was a lifesaver. Now, because I'm working with 8-inch woofers in the speakers now, really should step up and get some kind of subwoofer to pick up some of that low end I'm missing. So I got the smallest one I could find. At the time, it was the Electro Voice, I think it was a ZLX A1 subwoofer, little 12-inch subwoofer, and put it on those speakers. And it worked. And I thought to myself, you know, I can do car shows by myself in small events. I'll still have to have somebody come out with me for larger events, but for the small stuff, I'll be just fine. Come to find out, that little system was probably the best sounding system I'd had to date. In fact, I know it was. I could do 300-person wedding receptions with ease. And the other thing I discovered quite by accident was going with that 12-inch subwoofer was so smart. With the 18-inch subs I was running, or even the 15s, they produce lower frequency bass, which is great. The only problem is that lower frequency bass ends up somewhere other than your dance floor. It has to travel pretty far to be, you know, realized. You hear it really well at the back of the room where grandma and Aunt Betty are trying to have a conversation, but you don't really realize it on the dance floor at all. With the smaller sub, wow, that kept the sound where I wanted it. No, I wasn't producing ultra low bass frequencies, but I don't need them for one. And yeah, you could totally have conversation anywhere in the room you wanted to with Aunt Betty and Uncle Bob or whatever. Nobody was complaining anymore. Still, the problem with people putting their fingers in their ears giving me dirty looks because of the horns, but that's just the physics of things. What can you really do about that? Seek grandma somewhere away from the system. That's the solution. Then I discovered compact arrays. Now, I know Bose had them for a long time, but they were really cumbersome to set up, and the woofers were tiny. FBT came out with the CS1000, which was a cool, hot rod, beautiful sounding speaker with a compact array, full range speakers, no horn. So that system wasn't honking at anybody anymore. And come to find out that the two-way top cabinets that I've been using for all those years had this 90-degree dispersion, so it was kind of like a wall of sound coming at people. These arrays actually have a wider dispersion, so sound goes to the side. For years, nobody next to me could hear toasts and speeches. Everybody in front could hear it fine, but the people over here couldn't. I would always blame it on the floor plan, but it turns out if you have a wider dispersion speaker, they can hear it fine over here. So we're going from 90 degrees to 120 degrees on those or something like that. Wow. Created a new problem though. Yeah, you got the sound to the side, but you also got it right here in your ear standing behind the DJ booth. So I learned to do something called toming speakers, which is just turn them a little bit out. It flattens out that wall of sound in front of you and creates even more listening areas to the side, going back even further. The only problem with the CS1000 for me was A, the weight, and B, there was a pole system that connected the sub on the bottom to the top, and those threads would get sticky sometimes, and if you've got one hand, that's hard to set up. So, better than anything I'd used in the past, and it sounded fantastic. I got a call from Mike Dussault from Electric Voice, and he said, look, we've got this new thing coming out. I want you to do an early test on it. We've got a prototype. I want you to try it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. He sends this thing to me. It's the Evolve 50 pre-release. I got it in like June. Wow. This was cool. It carried a lot easier than the CS1000. There was no pole system I had to put together with screws and stuff. This was magnetic. So you just stick the pole on there. That's all you got to do. You don't have to screw anything together. And the other cool thing was it had a built-in mixing board. Everything that I'd had before that didn't have it. They were just kind of like a powered speaker, but you had like a volume on there and maybe a DSP knob to choose, like, live, rock, whatever. This was a full built-in mixing board with all kinds of settings on it in the DSP menu. Not only DSP settings, but EQ settings and phantom power, multiple inputs. So I'm like, wow, you mean I can not bring a backup mixing board anymore? Because if something goes down, I can plug a mic and my computer into this thing with the right cables, and the gig can actually happen. I can get by. That's where I'm at. Now we've got the Evolve 30M. It's smaller, and it's cool because it's got a built-in Dynacord mixer on it with like 8 channels. So I've gone from really bad sounding stuff that was sitting on the floor to harsh sounding stuff and heavy that goes up in the air to active speakers that don't require an amplifier to an array that is easy to put together and carry for a disabled person like me. It's going to be different for a school dance. I'm not going to bring that kind of stuff that size to a school dance. I'm going to have to bring a more traditional PA system, the two-way top cabinet, something aggressive with subs, to like a school dance where I need to fill a room with good loud sound. But for the wedding receptions I do, creating the conversation areas, ease of setup, and crisp, clean sound that's not harsh at all, no honking at anybody, yeah, those are my favorites. That's it. What are your favorites? Let us know in the comment section. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to my story. Practice and enjoy.